On the heels of a 2012 season that saw the Atlanta Falcons really come about this close to making it to the Super Bowl, expectations were running very high for the Atlanta Falcons and their fans and the organization. And amongst the sports media heading into 2013, the belief was that they added Steven Jackson, they did this, they did that. By God, that's what they needed to get them over the hump, and that's what's going to get them to the Super Bowl. And then the season happened. Falcons fans, do you still think you didn't need Eddie Lacy? Just throwing that out there, just reminding you. But in all seriousness, the Falcons had a tough schedule in 2013. They started off 1-3. It's not looking good. Julio Jones starts off having this monster year, and then he suffers a foot injury, and he's gone the rest of the year. Roddy White, he took almost all a year to finally get back to health after, really struggling to come back from injury, struggling to regain his form. You have your big free agent signing, Steven Jackson, who really was a non-factor early on in the season in the running game due to injuries and then poor play, and also the poor play of the offensive line in front of him. Matt Ryan had a less than stellar season, and then, of course, the defense played very poorly. They were beset by injuries and overall suctitude, and the team, as a result, ended up finishing 4-12, and it shouldn't have been that surprising, I guess. It also wasn't that surprising to me to see the Atlanta Falcons, knowing that they have some nice core pieces in place, knowing that they're really not that far away, that 2013 was more of an aberration than it really was an indicator of things to come necessarily, that this team was going to be aggressive to try and upgrade their roster, especially on the defensive side of the ball for 2014. They brought in a lot of players via free agency, guys like Paul Solali, I always fuck up his name, sorry, Soliai. Excuse me, yes. Tyson Jackson. Then they went to the offensive side of the ball and signed John Asamoah to help fortify the interior of that line. They brought in Devin Hester to bring them something in the return game, something that they've lacked. They went in the draft and they focused on the trenches in the first 2 rounds, which I thought was a good philosophy, drafting Jake Matthews out of Texas A&M in round 1, and then Rashad Hageman, the defensive lineman out of Minnesota, in round number 2, a defensive lineman that seems to perfectly fit the 3-4 defense that the Falcons seem to want to run now in 2014. The only real major loss that I see, even though it is still a big one, is Hall of Fame tight end Tony Gonzalez. Apparently, at least at this moment as we talk, deciding to hang him up and making 2013 his last season. Now, you could say, well, that doesn't really matter. A 4-12 team should lose a lot. If they don't really lose a lot, what does that mean? Well, it means that they were really able to stem the tide, that they didn't lose key players. And like I said, 2013 to me was more an aberration than the reality of who the Falcons were as a team overall. Now, looking ahead to 2014, what are some of the strengths of this team? I'll start off with the wide receiver unit. Now, of course, I'll throw Matt Ryan in there too. You've got Matt Ryan. He's a legit franchise quarterback. To me, he's a legit top 10 quarterback in the National Football League. So obviously you start off well when you have a real quarterback. When you have a franchise quarterback, it sets you up so much better than a lot of other teams. At least 2/3 of the teams are close to it, at least half in the National Football League. And then you throw in there the wide receiver unit that 1 through 3 might be one of the very best, if not the best, in all the National Football League. You're talking about a hopefully returning to health Julio Jones, a hopefully returning to full health Roddy White, and then Harry Douglas, who finally showed something in 2013, having over 1,000 yards with all the opportunities he got with the injuries to both Jones and White. He produced. Now you come into this season and you say that 2013 was a good thing because now we got more out of somebody else. Now we know that we have more in the passing game, another weapon in Harry Douglas. That's a hell of a matchup for opposing defenses to have to defend Jones, White, and Harry Douglas. And I also look at the defensive line. I think they've got some nice pieces in place to be able to run that 3-4 that they're going to want to go with. And that's going to be key for them. As much as we always talk about the linebackers in a 3-4 being the key, in terms of the pass rush they are, but in terms of the defense, it's just as important to have that great nose tackle that can eat up and clog space and command double teams, and having those 2-5 technique ends that can get some pressure on the quarterback, but just as importantly, if not more so, be able to play the run and be able to eat up blockers as well. And I think they've got a defensive line that is well equipped to do just that come 2014. Now, in terms of the question marks for this team, I look at the running game, and frankly, they really don't have much of one. They need more out of Steven Jackson. They need more out of guys, period. When you sit there and you become one-dimensional, at some point in time, it's going to bite you in the ass. And the Atlanta Falcons, in a lot of ways, were a one-dimensional team last year. Now, that in part was because their defense was so bad for a period of time that they got way behind in a lot of games, and game situations dictated that they had to throw the ball a lot, which led to Matt Ryan making bad decisions and forcing the ball and turning the ball over. But you got to be able to run the ball too. You got to be able to keep defenses honest. You have to be able to pick up those tough yards, especially in winning time, the last 4 and 5 minutes of games. You got to have a running game to be able to do that, and I'm not sure the Falcons have one, frankly, at this point in time. Tight end, I realize they got Tololo in there, and they're de-emphasizing the tight end position, but in today's NFL, is that really a smart thing? I mean, all those years, Matt Ryan had Tony Gonzalez to turn to, and now he doesn't. And in a league where the tight end position is just increasing in value, you get more and more of the arguments about whether these great elite tight ends are wide receivers or are they tight ends, how are they going to get paid, what have you. I think it's a little bit of a backwards philosophy for the Falcons to go to more of a run-first philosophy out of that position, just in my opinion. And then I have question marks about the secondary. Trufant and Alford, your top 2 picks in the 2013 draft, need to play better. What are the Falcons going to get at safety? I don't really like their secondary all that much, and I have concerns about whether or not that secondary is going to be able to hold up against some of the good offenses in the NFC. Now, looking ahead to the team's schedule, it's not the most brutal road in the world, which is in large part why I see a big turnaround coming for the Falcons this season. They get to play the AFC North, the NFC North, and then their 2 NFC conference games, I think, are both winnable games for them against the Giants and Arizona. In terms of their keys to success for 2014, they got to stay healthy on both sides of the ball. This is not the deepest team, even though I think they improved their depth a little bit this offseason, both via the draft and free agency. I look at other guys like Prince Shembo that might be able to come in and be contributors in that 3-4 system right away. They got to stay healthy, though. You got to stay healthy. You can't have so many guys and so many key players missing so many key games like they had in 2013. They need their offensive line to play better. It was a big weakness for them in 2013. I think they got stronger with adding Asamoah in free agency and drafting Jake Matthews in the first round. This is still not a great offensive line. That offensive line needs to do a better job of opening up holes in the running game and being able to provide adequate to solid pass protection for Matt Ryan, giving him more time to go through his progressions and go through his options and make sure he makes the best decision, not just the first decision. They need this defense to take to the schematic change of, I believe, switching to a 3-4, and it's maybe something that needed to happen a year or 2 ago. So we're going to see, how this personnel takes. I think they've got a lot of the personnel to be able to run the 3-4, especially up front with their 3 down linemen, but their defense has got to play better. You've got a defensive-minded head coach. Their defense has to play better in 2014 if they want to be successful, if they have visions of making the playoffs, if they have visions of maybe winning their division. And I think some of these things are going to happen. I think they will get more production out of that offensive line. I think they'll play better in 2014. I think Julio Jones and Roddy White will stay healthy. I think the Falcons will be able to overcome the loss of Tony Gonzalez at tight end in the passing game. I think their defense will play better with the scheme change and with some of the pieces that were added. In particular, a guy like Rashad Hageman really stands out to me as a guy that could do well right away. I think this Falcons team is poised to have a nice bounce-back season. I think they'll end up winning the NFC South, probably going 10-6, maybe going 11-5. Like I said, with the NFC South, there's so much turnover, it seems like, from year to year. And this is a Falcons team, again, that had just made the playoffs a few years in a row, a team that came this close to making it to the Super Bowl 2 years ago. I'm not ready to throw the towel in on them yet. I think they've got a lot of nice pieces in place, and they're poised for a big bounce-back year in 2014.